When I was 25 and a half, I started a podcast. The goal? To review some of the newest and the latest movies, along with some other stuff. With the help of my guests, I was able to do this, but there were dark forces tampering with my podcast, and with me. They called it an improvised podcast for some reason. I eventually found help in the form of myself. Yes, the me from a universe where the movies I reviewed got delayed. Apparently, my podcast made it to his universe. I know now that it is my duty, for the good of that universe, nay, the multiverse, to keep recapping and reviewing these movies, to hold listeners over until they could eventually see the movies as they were made in their world. For some reason, they come out differently in my world, but it's kind of entertaining that way. My name is Steven Shinder, and this is Delayed Replay. Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Delayed Replay, that podcast where we review things that got delayed in that other universe but came out on time in our universe. I'm your host, as always, Steven Shinder, and joining me once again for a Star Wars related episode. You may have listened to him before. He has his own YouTube channel. He has his own podcast called Outer Rim Transmission. It is Starrapter. What's up with you, man?
Hello, Steven. A long time no talk. Hey, everybody. Hey, listeners out there. I'm super hyped because it's Star Wars, right? I mean, this is my life and blood as I bleed Star Wars, right? So this is very appropriate for me to come back. I know we've been talking about the High Republic books, which I have held in very high esteem. Love what they're doing with that storytelling before the events of Phantom Menace. I'm loving what's going on with the current Mandoverse and everything revolving around that. So it's going to be a really great show.
Me and my other self have been talking, but apparently, the High Republic books, there's a point where they kind of merge and become more similar. It sounds very complicated, but that's kind of weird, right? But yeah, this time we're talking about another novel as it happens, and you kind of alluded to it already. It is The Mandalorian, an original novel by Adam Christopher. So in our universe, it came out December 2nd, 2020. So it's almost a year old. And I think it got delayed once and then got canceled because of scheduling. Yeah, this is an interesting one. But before we get into it, how much have you been enjoying the Mando related content?
Oh, I think it's fantastic, right? I mean, right now we don't have a lot of expanded universe content. Believe it or not, this is actually the book first thing outside of the TV screens that we get to dive in with the Mando universe. But so far, what they've been doing, the world building, that time in between Return of the Jedi and the Force Awakens is so fertile ground for storytelling. We just don't know what's happening. So to see characters popping up left and right from Clone Wars, some legendary characters, this series really just opens Pandora's box, so to speak, of anything could happen, right? If you even have an inkling of some character maybe showing up, there's a good chance it actually might show up, right? You have the showrunners of Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni; those guys are there. They live and breathe Star Wars themselves, and see them put in tiny little details like quacking monkey lizards roasting on a spit, or just crazy Macquarie art of spiders from things that were never used, right? So they really are going deep, doing these deep cuts, and not afraid to go there, not afraid to flex their kind of war muscles out there for the standard audience. And I think they've been really kind of treading the fine line of okay, not overloading too much exposition, but just giving people a taste of hey, this character was from here. Hey, there's a whole Clone Wars series you can watch on Disney Plus. Go ahead and enjoy. So I think it's really been good for that, but it's also been a very compelling show, even from all the cool little tidbits of Easter eggs and whatnot. Just the actual format of the show, every episode's meaningful. Yeah, they don't have to be hour-long episodes to be effective, and they work just as well, right? That every 30 to 40 minutes every week where I get to sit down and enjoy Star Wars in a way I never would have thought of about 10 years ago, where it's I'm actually at home watching new Star Wars that is live action. That would only be relegated to a theater experience. And now I'm here just looking forward to every Wednesday, right? Just, hey, there's a new Mandalorian episode. Let's go check it out. And I love the fan a craze of everybody every week just getting together on different podcasts and really just having a blast with it, right? Because like the movie comes out, you talk about it for 3 months or something like that. Whereas here we get that Game of Thrones water cooler kind of talk, which I find is just so fun, showing up at work on a Thursday. Some of my coworkers watch it. Hey, what'd you think about that? Or, oh, do you know about this? I give them a little bit of tidbit of Easter eggs, like, hey, did you know this was from this? Or what'd you think about, Grogu doing that? Or what do you think could happen in the next episode? It's those kind of discussions that really just make the series stand on its own and just become something that you don't need to actually watch the movies. Like I could recommend The Mandalorian season 1 to just anybody on the street. Oh, if you watch A New Hope, I've heard of it, but I haven't watched it. Oh, you don't have to. Go watch Mandalorian. It's all brand new characters. Sure, they thread in new characters later on, but it really is a great entry point, a great gateway into other Star Wars content. So right off the top, that's my initial impressions of Mandalorian. I'm absolutely loving it.
It's definitely a crowd pleaser show. I admire how season 1 relied a lot on new characters. Like when they later brought in familiar characters, like sometimes it was hit and miss for me, but from the looks of it, it looks like most people love all of the cameos. And I guess I'm just a bit more critical about certain ones. Overall, the quality's been pretty good, which is really refreshing for live action Star Wars. And I love the weekly release schedule. Like I think the Netflix model kind of needs to die, in my opinion, because like you drop a whole season, everyone watches it within a week, and then it gets confusing. Like, oh, which episode are you on this week? And it's like people stop talking about it after like a week or two. Whereas, like you said, here with like these Disney Plus shows, like from Star Wars and from Marvel, you can talk about a different episode week to week. And I love that. And with Star Wars, it's very surprising that it took so long for there to be a live action series. Like any other franchise, like major franchise, would have started like a live action TV series like a few years after the original movies ended. Like in the mid 80s, we just had those two. I say we as if we were alive back then, but we weren't. But for the people who were around back then, it's like after the movies ended, they just had 2 Ewok movies and like a couple animated shows, Droids and Ewoks, and then that was it. And then in the 90s, they sort of was like, there was Star Wars literature before, but from the 90s onward is when the expanded universe really started to feel more connected. Like you had the Bantam era and later the Del Rey era, and Star Wars went from Marvel to Dark Horse, and then later Marvel again during the Disney buyout, or after that actually. Mandalorian, when I watched it for the first time, it really felt like a live action expanded universe show. Like I kind of got that feel from like Rogue One and Solo felt like expanded universe movies, if that makes sense. Like this felt like an expanded universe show with even focusing on newer characters at first, at least. And it's like, wow, you get like these different corners type of thing. And yeah, I think that's a really great way to like start shows, like in general, when you're dealing with a big franchise like this.
You're dealing with characters, a lot of aliens, a lot of new faces, and right. So, I mean, usually we have the saga films. Everybody knows the characters that are involved with them, but now we get all these new characters, and it's set on these backwater planets of just bounty hunters, right? We had all those great bounty hunter books from the 90s. I think they came out, Tales of the Bounty Hunters and different thing, and countless afterwards. And it's like, this is my Star Wars. Like, I love the underworld. I love when it comes to like these criminals and these organizations and these people just trying to get above the other person and trying to get these bounties, and that way of life I find just so fascinating. And we got a tip of the iceberg storytelling with that, with Boba Fett in the original trilogy and all that kind of thing. So here we get to see a day in the life of a bounty hunter, and the bounty hunter that actually ends up having a heart in the end of things and actually having a lot more conflict than, oh yeah, how can I get behind a guy that's got a helmet on the entire show? Like, how am I supposed to feel emotion for this character? And let me tell you, they actually pulled it off. Like the way that the different actors are in there, the way that Pedro Pascal does his performance with VO, it just is so compelling, and it
Yeah,
actually
and
works.
all the movements, yeah.
Yeah, it works a lot more than you would expect. So yeah.
When we think of Star Wars, like for many years, there's been an emphasis on the Force and lightsabers and stuff like that. But when you look back at the original movie, it's like a lot of it is, Tatooine and the scum and villainy of Mos Eisley, and it's that Western element. And Mandalorian really fed into that, used that type of inspiration. And it's not just using Star Wars as inspiration; it's taking inspiration from the stuff that influenced Star Wars. So yeah, there's like some out of the box thinking every now and then, and I really admire that about how they run the show.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a great thing that Disney Plus led off with. I think that really gives them a lot of eyeballs. Whether or not if that didn't exist, who knows what Disney Plus would be right now. But it gives people the passion. It gives the people the idea, like, hey, this could be done. We could make this high caliber AAA, in video game terms, experience for the small screen that can draw people in. And here we are, we're getting multiple seasons of other shows, a couple years removed from the premiere of this show. So it just shows you, like, okay, things are now starting to spiral, and it is just going to be fun, like having a never ending stream of Star Wars content in basically 365 days, 52 weeks a year, basically.
Yeah, this truly is the golden age of Star Wars television, I think. Same with Star Trek, like all the stuff that they're putting out at such a frequent rate. It's like there's something for everyone now. Like getting to the novel, so this is more of a prequel story because I guess they really don't want to try to accidentally contradict the show, which makes sense to me. And okay, so let's talk about the title first. Like, what do you think of the fact that they only titled it The Mandalorian, an original novel?
Yeah, I don't know about the subtitle and original novel. I think they should just left it with The Mandalorian. But I ultimately would have liked another subtitle beneath that explained a little bit more. Somebody can come up with something a lot more creative than me, of course. But whatever. A title's a title. It's really what makes what's inside those front to back cover that really matters in the long run. So, and all in all, I'm kind of indifferent, but they could have had a little spicier of a title, I guess.
Yeah, I guess the original novel subtitle is to let people know, like the casual people, like looking through the books or whatever, like letting them know that it's a new story as opposed to like a novelization of the show. But I totally agree. Like it could have been a better subtitle. Like it could be simple, like Mandalorian Begins or something. Like I don't know. Like I also kind of wondered if maybe they thought, oh, it's an origin story, and the word origin is in original. Like I don't know if that was their thinking, but it's kind of silly if that was. And it really picks up from that flashback we got in the first season where Din Djarin and his parents, like he's a kid and they live on this planet called Akvetina. And like first off, we get like sort of a build up to the battle. Like we kind of see like their normal family life before there's all this conflict. Like what'd you think of how they depicted the family dynamic before all that?
Yeah. So quick kind of comparison. Just dawned on me. This book has a similar vibe to Star Wars Rebel Rising by
Yeah.
Beth Revis, for the basically the whole life of Jyn Erso, living with Saul Guerrero, then going out on her own and forging her credentials and all that, trying to just get by. So it was pretty much like that. Like, okay, like here's Mando. We've seen the flashbacks. Let's do a couple chapters here, then do like a fast forward, a couple chapters here, and then it just eventually almost like really just ties into almost like that first episode where we just see him walking on that planet toward the cantina. So I thought right off the bat, like, okay, this is a great, just like a one encompassing book. This is not a series. It's just like, okay, here's everything in his life, and I think it was written pretty interesting. But as far as like going into that first initial scene, that was a cool scene because I love how they did it in a show where like they gave you little bits and pieces of it every couple episodes to like leave you wanting more. Like, okay, is it a droid? What's gonna come after him? What's next? Oh, it's Death Watch. Is Obi-Wan or is Ahsoka gonna come in and just wipe the floor with these guys? No. So we just, we see that it's just the Death Watch, and we know the Death Watch, as the hardcore fans know from, we're not even hardcore, but just the general fans know from Clone Wars series. So I do like how they had that kind of inserted as like the focal point of, okay, this is how Mando's going to react. Like his parents literally are dead. What is going on with this kid's head? Like he's being like jetpacked to the sky from just complete strangers as he's never even seen before. I mean, he's heard like myths of these soldiers with these T visors, and they are very mysterious and are very great warriors, but he's never actually seen one in person, and he has no idea what is happening. So I just like that first chapter of like being in his head of like this poor kid, like just not only is his parents getting just destroyed, but then he's actually getting taken by strangers. He has no idea what to even think about.
Yeah, and we learn a bit about his parents. Like his mom is some sort of mechanic and his dad is an accountant. And he makes like these snide remarks about how the banking clan are a mess or whatever. So it's a kind of funny humor there, like a little like levity before stuff hits the fan.
That's a really good point about the mother being a mechanic, because we do see in season 2, like he's actually like repairing the Razor Crest. Same thing in season 1 when the Jawas are ripping apart. You see him actually giving a hand to Kuel. So okay, it's cool. Like we're getting those little nuggets of like, oh yeah, like how was he so good at fixing the ship? Oh, it's because his mother taught him how.
Yeah, like she seems to really have passion for it, and like she's very like into it, and like when he like the way that it describes like the feeling he has when he's able to put stuff together, it kind of reminds me of the feeling that fans like us have had like putting Legos together, or like even Star Wars puzzles. Like I feel like this book, whether it's intending to or not, kind of taps into that feeling of what a kid Star Wars fan might feel at certain points. And yeah, as for the chapters, I thought it was an interesting choice that the book is made up of 8 long chapters. Like you'll have a chapter that'll be like almost 30 pages and a chapter that'll be like over 50 pages, and it feels like they're trying to echo the 8 chapter structure of a season of the show, which kind of made it difficult for me to like know when I wanted to take a break from reading a chapter, because like these are like so long. But that being said, it still kept me wanting to read further. So I guess it wasn't as much of a problem for me, but I could kind of see how maybe other people would be like, couldn't they have like divided it into even more chapters to make it easier type of thing?
Yeah, there was a little bit of, okay, like this chapter is, because the book is almost like kind of like a biography. It's like, okay, like from this age I was doing this, and this age I did this. So you have different moments in his life. So yeah, that would have been a little bit more streamlined, I guess, if they can give us some more chapters in there. I think I go along with your train of thought, was like, oh yeah, let's try to mimic as much as the feel for the series. Like, this is like, -8, -7, -5 on our way up to like chapter 1 or whatever of the actual series, pretty much.
Get the family dynamic, like they have some dinner, that they eat that bread stuff that Rey eats in The Force Awakens. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but I guess they have it here as well. And apparently orange milk is a thing. I wonder if that tastes like orange juice or something, but
Yeah, because we have the thalassiren milk from Last Jedi with Luke Skywalker on Ahch-To. Obviously, bantha milk on Tatooine, and it's like, all right, what's this orange thing? I'm very curious about what the creature would look like that produces such orange milk.
yeah, it kind of feels like you're writing a Star Wars story. And it's like, okay, what do people drink? Oh, milk. That's a weird color, and they just like tack that in there, um, which I'm okay with, I guess. Like, it does make you wonder like what it comes from at the very least. And yeah, it's just like a very nice dinner scene, like very peaceful. It's so weird because like he's a kid in this moment, and he's talking about how he wants to go out and play with his friends the next day, because like during the show itself I never imagined him having friends as a kid. Like it wasn't really something I thought about, but it's like if he's a kid and he's in this village or town or whatever, it's like, yeah, of course the kids would like play with each other. And so did that sort of add a bit of something to him, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it did for sure. I mean, just knowing what is happening as far as being from that angle, knowing what he's doing there. Um, but I do like how the story gets started, right? Like, okay, we got that chapter. It's like, where did Death Watch go? Like, we see what happens. Like, they do actually like retell. Adam Christopher does retell the events of the Mandalorian at that moment, where he's like, okay, he's hiding out in that like cellar, and then he hears. So it goes through the whole thing, of course, and then you actually get to see where the Death Watch goes. They're flying off to their, forget what they're called, those really cool looking Mandalorian fighters. I guess they're the Fang fighters or something like that. And it turns out that the Death Watch, they're actually hiding out on Nar Shaddaa, right? Like I was like, holy crap! Like I can't get enough of this planet. It's basically like the Las Vegas planet of the Star Wars universe. You have a lot, you have that showing up in the canon comics a lot, but we haven't still seen it on live action or animated form. So come on, guys, put that in there. But it's a lot of cool stuff happening because that's where he gets his first taste of like the underworld, right? You got the different huts and the kids that are still in power there, all different sorts of aliens. And that's where the Death Watch are just hiding out, right? They're trying, at this point it's kind of still in the Clone Wars, so they're still acting, they're actually still reporting to Darth Maul or Maul at this point in time with the Shadow Collective is still sort of a thing. So there, you get a really nice scene of one of the leaders, Gar Saxon, actually, seeing a hologram of Maul. So you actually get to see like Din Djarin, like doesn't actually see Maul, but he actually like kind of hears like this mysterious voice when he's like trying to sleep at night in like the barracks. So I thought that was like a really cool nod, like, hey, they're tying everything together, everything is high. So they're hiding out and they're just doing their jobs for Maul, and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of like hit and run tactics, for a lot of like supply depots and things like that, where they get in and out. They get the jetpack, and that's where for Mandalorian he learns how to. I forget the exact phrase of what the armor called it with the way he flies with the jetpack. There's a certain term, like some cool ritualistic sounding like verb for like using the jetpack or something like that. But in other words, he obviously gets taught all of those skills by Gar Saxon there.
The audiobook for this, like, Mark Thompson narrates a lot of these things, but for the Maul moments, they were able to get Sam Witwer to do like the Maul dialogue in this. Like, he was pretty much very happy to just do it, I guess, because Sam Witwer and Maul, it's just peanut butter and jelly, I guess, goes together really well. Like, I love how Adam Christopher like retells the flashback because we see the fear in the people against like the super battle droids, and Din is wondering if his friends are alive or dead, and he never finds out for sure because like everyone's like running around and it's chaos. And when Death Watch takes him away, like like he never looks back and like doesn't know the fates of the people that he knew there. He just knows that like his parents are dead, and he's like really sad about it. Like, he really goes through the grief, and it's like, for a child, it's very traumatizing to have something like that happen. I guess it's kind of comparable to what Boba Fett went through when his dad was beheaded in the arena on Geonosis. Those Boba Fett book that picks up like during and after Attack of the Clones. That's pretty much my first expanded universe book, so it kind of felt very familiar reading through some of the similar emotions in this book for me.
Oh yeah, definitely a lot of parallels between those two characters as well. And just again, like he obviously your parents get killed in front of you. Basically, you're gonna have trauma for like your entire life. Obviously, that's not going away. But the way he deals with it is through his training. So you have a couple montage type of moments in there where he's going at it, and it just like fuels his proficiency. I guess is like him able to kind of channel his grief. He's able to channel his grief and whatnot to make him a more proficient fighter. So I like that detail of like, okay, Like now, and this is what I like about these books, right? Is now you have a little bit of inside information about his head. So now that I'm watching The Mandalorian, I'm thinking in my head like, okay, this is what Din Djarin is thinking as he's fighting these criminals. Like he's doing it for the right way, for the right reasons, but he's also, channeling his grief a little bit in doing so.
We mentioned Rebel Rising earlier. It's like Jin after she witnesses her mother getting gunned down. And, this book kind of feels like a mix between Catalyst and Rebel Rising. Well, like, Catalyst began like during the Clone Wars and then continued afterwards. So it's like hard for me to not draw those parallels. But yeah, I kind of like how there's like this thematic thing going on. It's this recurring theme in Star Wars where, it's like really sad to see. You have these young characters who get pulled into all these different conflicts, and it's like they have to survive. And in the process of surviving, like, what will they become eventually? And that's essentially what becomes the question, like, as you explore the adventures that they have throughout the rest of their lives, like over the years.
Yeah, so that's really like I guess like the second chapter or whatever. More into the middle of the book though, you do get that moment, right? You get the moment that we've all heard and thought about, speculated about, that where like the Mandos just basically got exterminated. We've all been figuring out, and we thought, okay, maybe they'll show it to us first, right? Maybe they'll have it on screen first. Like it seems like a very important event. But they actually shocked me. They actually put this on the printed page first before we're going to see it. So I was like, holy crap, like this is worth the price of admission. Just this like one chapter of like how everything went down, right? How was your reaction to like that fateful night?
My reaction was, this is so well written, and I really hope that the TV show doesn't contradict how this plays out.
Yeah, we've seeing a little bit of that here and there with some canon comics and whatnot, which aren't a big deal. But yeah, I know. I mean, I was like,
oh, please novel with the flashbacks.
Yeah, please don't mess this up.
Yeah, but it's like very brutal. Like, it describes the fire everywhere and how like there's like some armor lying on the ground and it's hard to tell if it's alive or dead. And like, this kind of traumatizes Din even further. Like, it's like, the thing that happens with his parents, and then he does all this other stuff. This galaxy is just beating him down, and it's like really sad.
Yeah, I mean, I like how there's a tie-in to the Star Wars Rebels season 4 episodes with, even back then, they were developing like weapons to use against the Mandalorians on Mandalore, where they would like literally like make them melt in their own Beskar armor. So to see like the evolution of that, to see all the E-webs, because I remember the show was like, yeah, we used the E-webs to basically take you guys out. So we had the E-webs, like super E-webs, and then just like more of those like mounted on ATST type weapons that would just literally like disintegrate everything but the armor. So we would just have the armor left, like the husk of a Mandalorian, and then they would like melt down the Beskar to create for their war machine for the Empire. So it was like, wow, this is really dark. I mean, it's a good thing that Del Rey made this novel, because they couldn't get past this. Definitely not a middle grade novel.
Right. It does get really intense. And I like these tie-ins. When I look at the Star Wars timeline, I love when like you can look at certain points of the timeline and be like, okay, that was happening there, which would eventually lead to this over here. And it's kind of cool, like being able to make connections in the history of the galaxy, and it just makes it a bit more interesting depending on the execution. And there are like some really emotional moments where it's like like we said, we really get into Din's head, and there are moments where like, when he's really young, he encounters some droids, and like these are like some droids that aren't really doing any harm, like astro droids and gonk droids, and it's like he just hates all droids, like every droid, because of the Clone Wars. It's like he just gets out his gun and just shoots them like point blank, and it just reminds me of that really sad moment at the end of Clone Wars season 7.
Yeah, there's so many great tie-ins to the different characters and different things going on that we got references to again, like, hey, they're actually figuring out how this event goes. And then, towards the later half of the book, we have Mando kind of on his own, because I mean, that was a crazy scene when he actually manages to get away. He gets that patrol vehicle, that Mandalorian vehicle. He finds it on Mandalore, like they're on Mandalore when all this stuff went down. And he was able to like mess with the transponders of the actual Razor Crest to make it what it is today, where it's like untrackable or whatever it is, as they mentioned in the actual series. So he's able to get away that way. And he goes to the only place he knew as home, and that was Nar Shaddaa. He goes down there, and throughout the different like training exercises and missions he went on with Death Watch, he had built up like kind of like some, I wouldn't say friends, but more like contacts in the underworld. So he knew a couple Hutts, he knew a couple I forget the one guy's name who was actually in episode number 5 or 6 of season 1, where he like meets that ragtag group with Bill Burr and the other guy. So he knows those dudes, but he does go back to this area on Nar Shaddaa that actually happens to be the residence of none other than Stinky himself, Rada the Hutt. And it was like mind-blowing moment. I was like, oh my gosh, like what is going on, right? This is huge, because it's like, why isn't this guy on Tatooine ruling after his father's death, Jabba? Like, he's there just living it up. And there's like this really great monologue with Rada, who is like, even though I'm destined to be this kingpin of crime, I don't want to be. I can make my own choices, because at this point he's basically like a teenager, right? Like Hutt's age very slowly. Like we see
Right.
how old Jabba is, so he's barely like an adolescent at this point. He's going through some stuff. He's just like, no, I want to have fun. I want to be in Nar Shaddaa, where the lights, nightlife and everything is great here, and I'm just having a ball, just doing my own thing. So that was really cool, because like Mando goes up to him and is like, do you have any jobs, any jobs for me or anything like that? Because they've been buddies in the past.
Yeah.
So
Any job as.
I ran into that one, but yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it was really nice to actually see his whereabouts in the overall Star Wars story. Like, yeah, we've seen this guy in the Clone Wars, and that was literally it. Nowhere else is he in the timeline.
Like, it kind of feels like we get the beginning and late middle of his story. Like, it kind of feels like there's still room for them to play in other parts of his life.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll get that in the Mandalorian video game or something that comes out next year, as they announced at Celebration last year, as we talked about here.
Yeah. So the whole focal point of this is the turning point of the story, because up until this point, Mandalorian, Din Djarin, it's kind of aimless. He's like, I just need to survive. Like, I'm just going from place to place to kind of survive. And he gets his one big job. So basically what happens is Rada the Hutt refers him to the Crime War Syndicate, which, man, oh man, these guys finally get their due. I mean, I've been hearing their name mentioned for the last 6 years in the new Del Rey era of Star Wars books. And it's like, yes, we finally get to see these guys, or at least hear about them. And so they give him the ultimate job, and they get this job, this bounty from like the Empire, or like the remnants of the Empire. It's like this very secretive thing, as we know from the first season of Mandalorian. Like, nobody's supposed to know the Empire's around. So anyway, it's like secondhand information that this Chimera Syndicate guy gives to Din Djarin, of there's actually a Jedi that survived Order 66 that has been giving the Remnant Empire a hell of a time. And it's revealed that's none other than Mace Windu. Mace Windu is like basically like half cybernetic, and he's been going around the depths of Coruscant, just causing havoc. Nobody knows it's actually Mace. Like, he's always like cloaked. Like, they gave him a specific nickname. I really enjoyed that nickname. What'd you think about the nickname they gave Mace Windu?
They nicknamed him Amethyst, right? Because they thought that the color of his lightsaber was amethyst. I'm not sure if it actually is, but it's it's purple and it sounds cool, I guess. Yeah, and like that's what they go with.
Yeah, so basically what Mando has to do is, like, he has to kind of go on a side quest sort of thing if it would be a video game, or he has to make a detour to Felucia. There's a laboratory there that was a Republic era laboratory that was very specific, to give him the proper tools. There's like a special special device that he's able to use that would give him like an advantage against a Jedi. So I thought that was pretty cool because I mean, this is really the story of how we know that Mandalorian can fight Jedi because we see how adept he is when he fights Ahsoka Tano there on that world in season 2. It's like, okay, like this guy has obviously fought Jedi before. This is actually that story. And going into this novel up until this point, I was like, all right, I'm waiting for that turning point moment. I'm waiting for like the thesis of this book. Like, what is this book about besides being just like the life of Mando between him being, carried away by the Death Watch and him showing up at that place? Like, no, it's literally a match with him against Mace Windu.
I gotta admit, like when they brought Mace Windu into the story, that's when it started to kind of lose me. I was like, oh, they're doing that in this.
Oh, I was so in. I was like, come on, I'm the story, and like I'm gonna lose sleep on reading this story. And I literally read this book in like 2 days. It was bad. I was like,
right,
I was like, I'm done.
Like, honestly, like he put this thing in a book as like it's just a really insane choice, and like bringing Mace Windu back to life, bringing like as it seems like feeding into those fan theories, but well, like another thing I was kind of worried about was how well this would interface with the TV show, because in the show it seems like Din maybe doesn't know the term Jedi from what I remember, but he knows about like enemy sorcerers, and so like
Yeah.
some of the terminology they use here, like when he's told about it, he's like they don't specifically say Order 66. They call it the Purge, which is essentially the same thing, and they talk about how like it was a purge of sorcerers and one of them survived, and basically like that's why he never like I don't think the word Jedi appears in this book from what I remember. So I guess they're kind of trying to adhere to it. Like it's kind of like it feels kind of loose, right? It's like, okay, I guess you kind of are falling in line with the show, but also this feels like a little bit of a stretch type of thing. Like, when watching the show, I never thought that, oh, Din Djarin has fought a Jedi head on, let alone Mace Windu.
Yeah, it was cool though because I like how they go with the terminology that they call him like a wizard has been causing havoc in the underworld, like the level 1313.
Yeah, and he's like, isn't wizard just a term that kids use to say cool or something? And it's like, well, this is what the actual word means.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, so from there he goes, he gets this device, and but here's the thing with Mace Windu, right? He has the specific form called the Vespod form, which is like he kind of he kind of like sees, he kind of channels the dark side a little bit.
Oh, Vapad?
Yeah, Vedpad. Yeah, sorry, Vedpad. So he kind of channels like the power. He created this form himself. Him and his Padawan Depa Billaba like created this form where it was very specific to them, but it also harnesses like Mace Windu's willingness to like dip into like the dark side just a little bit for power. So that was interesting. They also like tied into the Shatterpoint novel where like Mace Windu is able to actually like see like the puzzle pieces. He imagines it as like a crystal, like there's a crack in the foundation or something where he could actually like see the weakness in something specific. It could either be like a single person or like an entire government. He's able to like, basically help overthrow just with the way he's able to utilize the Force and how it calls to him specifically. It's a very rare trait for a Jedi to have. So basically, he's able to get this thing that's going to take that away from him. So Mandalorian went down to this laboratory because the separatists were using this device to kind of minimize the effectiveness of the Jedi's power from the Force. And somehow, I don't know how, but somehow people completely forgot this laboratory was down there. It's like, wait, how do you just forget this thing exists?
Like Shatterpoint is one of my favorite Legends novels. Like it very much feels like a war story and kind of taking inspiration from like some of those really dark, like what's it called, Heart of Darkness or Apocalypse Now type of story. And back when the Kanan comics originally came out, they deal with Depa Billaba coming out of a coma, I thought they were gonna make her very conflicted and make some of that Shatterpoint novel, like some of its events, canon, but instead Depa Billaba was just not conflicted or anything. Like I guess in canon she does not commit war crimes, so like it's just that she got injured by Grievous in the canon continuity. So in that regard, I was kind of let down by that part of the canon comics. I don't know, like I'm still able to enjoy like Shatterpoint on its own, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a little bit. That's where the inconsistency comes from with a legend story, but then comparing it to something in the current timeline of the canon and all that. So,
I mean, Mace Windu in Legends and canon are like two different characters to me. Like I feel like in canon they emphasize his negative aspects a bit more, like you know how he's like supposed to be like everything that's wrong with the Jedi Order, whereas in Legends I remember there were moments here and there where he felt really bad about certain things and they hammer that a bit more. So yeah, it's interesting to see how different people depict these characters across the different continuities. But yeah, in this laboratory we get another Legends reference. Like there's this armor that is said to be full of some sort of liquid like underneath the plating, like it's sort of like circulating through it, and this liquid is said to be synthetic Isalamiri blood, like you know those creatures from the Thrawn trilogy. Like I guess they're able to get blood from Isalamiri and sort of duplicate it somehow, like use its properties so that when someone puts on this armor it sort of creates a bubble through which Jedi wouldn't be able to like use the Force against them as easily.
that was cool. Coming back to the good old Thrawn trilogy that a lot of current Star Wars has been kind of leaning more towards as of late. So that's it. I mean, that's the focal point. Like we got the armor. We go back to Coruscant, and it's a nice trip because you get to see what Coruscant looks like after like the fall of the Empire, and it's just an absolute chaos. Like, yeah, you can actually see where the Empire actually held things together pretty well, and once they're gone, it just evolves into like a completely just messed up place, and that's why we see that the New Republic never ended up setting up their government there again because they're like, let's just get out of this hellhole here, move somewhere to like Chandrilla or
Yeah, like it's become a literal dumpster fire type of thing.
oh yeah, yeah. So this is the cool part, right? I mean, a lot of this book is cool for me, but I'm really just like, okay, we got Din Djarin. He's on like his like I wouldn't say his first mission, but it's definitely his first mission against a Jedi. So he's very green when it comes to just trying to track these down, but he's being as professional as possible. He means no business. He does no funny business with this job. He's very disciplined, and he goes down into the cellar, and well, this is where he first spots the wizard.
Dark in the cellar, and then it describes how like suddenly there's a purple light, and that's when like the fight starts, and it's like really touch and go. Like he's really trying to avoid the lightsaber because you know like as much as with the Isalamiri armor thing, like whatever it was they called it, like it can like keep someone safe from the Force, but it doesn't block lightsabers, so you still have that threat going on here.
Yeah, I do want to back up for a moment because this part was super cool. So before you even see the amethyst blade light up, you just see like out of the corner of this room just like a red eye, like a red glowing eye. And then the purple saber lights up like kind of near his face, and you just like see like half of his face is just like looks like literally Cyborg from like the DC universe. And you see he's got like the metal hands, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this is the Mace Windu that I've always wanted to see. I'm like, oh, we need to get like some good concept art of what this actually looks like here, because this is badass.
I mean, it also reminded me of Baylor Valance, who originated in the original Marvel Star Wars comics and has been in the more recent Marvel Star Wars comics. So, yeah, it's kind of weird how like that cyborg character was around in those older comics before and like fought Vader, and this was before Vader himself was confirmed to be a cyborg. So it's like retroactively it became a bit more symbolic, at least to someone like me who like knows like, you know, the stuff that's been confirmed since then. And it's like, oh, that's kind of poetic, I guess.
Yeah. So it goes back and forth, back and forth. There's just a lot going on here. I think I did get a little bit lost with the writing with Adam Christopher. I feel like I've definitely read better lightsaber duels or confrontations with Jedi. I felt like I got a little bit lost. The pacing was okay. There was a few things of dialogue thrown back and forth, but it just seemed like it was over so fast. I was like, really? Like Mace Windu, like Jedi Council member, gets defeated by this Mandalorian that quick. I was like, hold on a second here. I was like, yeah, I don't know if this is up until this point. I was loving this book, and then just the resolution to this whole encounter just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, you know?
Yeah, and some of the wording was a bit repetitive during this duel. Like it kept saying he ducked and then he parried and then he ducked and then he parried, and it was like just over and over. And you know, like I don't. There's a fine line, you know, like there are certain words that you can repeat for emphasis to sort of like keep on hitting on something thematically that you want to emphasize. But other times, depending on how you do it, it can get really annoying. You know, I think back to Thrawn alliances where we kept getting double vision, you know, with Darth Vader's thoughts. Like I know it's hard to write duels like these, but I don't know. I kind of feel like it could have been described better.
Yeah, yeah. So as far as alive or dead, right? I mean, that's a bounty hunter for you. It's like, all right, alive or dead. What do you think about the choice that Din Djarin made here at the end of the thing?
I mean, it's kind of an ethical dilemma for him because it's like he hates droids, but it's like, is this guy technically a droid? Or, like, if he has these cybernetic parts, and it's very much like the duality of that he's facing, and he's like really in his head about it, and he's like, am I doing a service by getting rid of a droid, or am I just being a cold-blooded killer? And you know, like as we've gotten to know Din Djarin, like by the time of the show, he has like no qualms like cutting someone in half, and then it's Grogu who sort of changes him a bit, like reminds him of the beating heart that's within him. But here it's like, you know, he's really trying to decide whether this is the type of person he wants to be. Keeps thinking back to that memory of, you know, the super battle droids and how they took down his parents, and he just feels this raw anger within himself. You know, this is the dark side within him. Like he's not a force user, but the dark side can corrupt non-force users. And I really liked how this book touched upon that without really saying it outright. You know, it was like show don't tell type of thing. And he decides to like go through with it. So he like is ready to pull the trigger, and then Mace's dying words are, I will not be the last, and then like he shoots him and he's dead. And then he's like, oh shit, like he thinks to himself like later on, like he kind of wonders if maybe he should have let him finish that sentence, because like he's kind of worried that like maybe there are other enemy sorcerers or something. And you know, this also like fueled some speculation. Like lots of people online are saying, was he gonna say the last Jedi, or was he gonna say the last Windu? Because like there's that fan theory that like I don't know if other people came up with it as well, but I certainly thought of it. The one where like instead of Jaruz Sabayoth, maybe there will be a Mace Windu evil clone in like the Mando era shows. And so this kind of got me wondering like whether this could be related to that. Like, is it the real Mace Windu? Like, it's hard to tell because like we don't really get in his head. Like, we're pretty much just in Din's head throughout this whole book. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's, well, first off, going back to your prior point about the whole correlation where it comes around full circle with him relating Mace Windu to like the terrors of his, you know, his previous life basically of like living with Death Watch and his parents getting killed. I thought that was great. That's when this book started to get me back on board again because I was like, oh, like what Adam Christopher did there. He's bringing it back. Like it's literally like it's poetic. Like okay, he's dealing with that, and this is going to be a moment in his life that he's going to look back on. This is like a turning point, right? It's like okay, this is one of the biggest jobs I'm ever going to do. And it's from this point on where I have to make the decision of life or death. And in that case, he chooses death just to be on the safe side because, like, I think part of the reason is like, how the hell am I going to get this guy back alive when he's a freaking Jedi master? Like, how is the logistics of transporting a Jedi on my vessel going to be a possibility? So I went into the decision making there.
Yeah, and I will admit the prose did get a bit cheesy, like when it said Din had been with the Death Watch and now he had to watch the death. And, that just sounded like really corny, like really cheesy and goofy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I got to give him a hand because he definitely pulled off something I think was all encompassing. Difficult to write a story that's this fast that really goes from one point of the character's life all the way to like several years later where we see literally this is like a bridge content book. It goes from see Mando, how he starts off, you see where he ends up, and you get those little Easter eggs in there where he returns back to Nar Shaddaa, he goes to the Cremor Syndicate, he gets the information, and then he goes back to Rada Hut just to hang out. Rada Hut says, "Hey, there's this technology that's out there, and it's this carbon freezing technology that's actually made portable now." And basically, Mando spends all the credits he earns on the actual carbon freezing upgrade.
Yeah, like he gets it installed into the Razor Crest.
There is sort of like a montage, right? Because he does like go and do a couple adventures, getting a couple people in the actual carbonite, and he's like, I could get used to this, He doesn't say much in this book, but I like that. It's just like, yeah, carbon freezing, I could get used to this. I can make a lot of money with this, and then he flies to the frozen planet.
Yeah, like it's kind of like a little. It's like a few paragraphs that span a bunch of time, it seems, and it's like you could fit some other adventures like in between these different bounties that sort of alludes to, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's an interesting way of doing it, sort of getting him from A to B or B to C or whatever. And admittedly, it is prequel stories. There is that temptation to end it right before the thing it's a prequel to. I think sometimes it is done really well, like Rogue One, obviously, the Thing prequel, I would say. But there are other times like the Red Dragon movie or like some other things where it's like, you didn't really need to end it like right before the Thing it's a prequel to. Like it's a bit fan servicey, but but here I guess it's sort of in the middle for me. Like, we mentioned the planet that he's going to, and it's like it doesn't end with him like literally knocking on the door. It's more like, okay, I guess that's the place that he's going to. That's in episode 1 of the show, and it's like, okay, like I guess they kind of found a middle ground for it. Like I'm neither in love with it nor feeling down about it. Like it's just kind of there, and it's like, okay, I guess that's how they end this book.
Yeah. I mean, overall, with this book, I was satisfied. I got out of it what I wanted to. I was very surprised about Mace Windu. I thought that was a really cool callback. I am very surprised to say that like they put such a big character in a book. I'm like, okay, I guess literally, whether or not he's posting on social media, I guess we'll never be able to get Sam Jackson back to do this. So they're like, oh, let's just throw him in a book,
Yeah, unless they do the cloning storyline after all. Like it's hard to tell if this is sewing or setting the stage for something or if this is just a throwaway thing where they're like, okay, we're never gonna do this, so we'll just put it in this book type of thing. Like it's kind of hard to tell even like all this time after it's been released. So like I don't know, I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah. But yeah, so overall, I think this is an enjoyable book. If you're a Mandalorian fan, I would definitely highly recommend picking it up. Is it absolutely essential? Not really, but it's a lot of fun, and again, seeing the underworld from Din Djarin's perspective, seeing his transition from being in Death Watch to a bounty hunter. I think it's a very, it's a pretty cool story that we have now.
And I thought it was very bold of Adam Christopher to include that part toward the end where, in dialogue, Din is like, I'm getting really sick and tired of all of these Star Wars. It's like, oh, they finally had a character within Star Wars say the word Star Wars.
I literally was like about to close. I like literally closed the book. I was like, they did it. They finally found the guy to do it. There it is.
Yeah, now they just need to do it on screen.
Oh my gosh, I don't know if we'll get to that point, but we shall see. The future is ever moving.
Yeah, so I guess with that, we can go into final thoughts and score out of 10 and unit of measurement. So, Starrapter, what are your final thoughts and score for The Mandalorian, an original novel?
Yeah, The Mandalorian, an original novel, Steven, is a story that I was waiting for a long time, and it didn't disappoint, right? Seeing Rod of the Hutt, seeing those connections to like, okay, why isn't he in the Book of Boba Fett? Like, why is he just not involved? Oh, it's because he's just being a rebellious adolescent Hutt that just wants to have his own life. So I thought that whole part was cool. I like just the whole themes of Mandalorian and loyalty, and just going ahead and pushing forward, having that perseverance, just that bravery and courage that we see we see like the little glimpses of Din Djarin and how it'll factor into like season 2 with Grogu. So, he's got a very hard exterior, but there are a few moments that you can actually start to see like that season 2 Din shining through that Beskar armor. But, Mace Windu, I think certain action sequences could have been done a little bit better. Some things left my head scratching, like, oh yeah, like, how could the Empire not find the Separatist facility and get the weapons and all that kind of thing with the Isalamari. But it was good because it really wrapped together a lot of things, whether it be the Thrawn books, the Crymora Syndicate, all those cool little Easter egg and nuggets. I was like, yeah, Adam Christopher, he's a fan of Star Wars for putting all that stuff in there. So overall, I'm going to go ahead and I am going to my score scale. Let's see, what should I make it? I'm going to give it 8 Beskar bricks out of 10.
Nice. Yeah, this book was one where, there are some books where they have a really good story, but you have to like really pay attention to like, keep your focus on the page, reading from beginning to end. This was one where my eyes were like clinging to every word because I wanted to know like what would happen, and I was following along with it pretty well. Like I didn't really need to flip back or reread something or whatever. But that being said, the story, like I enjoyed most of it, but then it kind of lost me a bit with the Mace Windu stuff. I feel like how I end up feeling about that in the end could hinge upon like what they might end up doing in the TV shows later on. So it kind of feels like I don't like, even after all this time, I'm still not sure if I have a final verdict on how much I like the story, but it's still an interesting psychological study of Din Djarin as a character, from kid to adult. And I could see how like the time skips could make this feel a bit disjointed, but I still enjoyed much of what I read of like what he was thinking and what he was going through, like trying to deal with his trauma and all that. So at this time, I think I'm going to give this 7.7 out of 10 gonk droids. Yeah, that'll do it. Thanks again, Starrapter. Where can people find all your stuff?
Oh, thank you very much, Steven. It's always a blast jumping on here and talking Star Wars and whatever else we usually talk about, because it's not just that all the time. But you can follow me on my primary way of promotion is YouTube. I do YouTube content creation. I do a lot of Star Wars videos. I've been doing some movie reviews. I have some other fall movies that have come out that I've reviewed. You can check that out, youtube.com/Starrapter. And I also have a weekly podcast, as Steven mentioned off the top of the show. It's called Outer Rim Transmission, and we go live on YouTube, but you can also listen to us on any of your favorite podcast streaming services. We are Star Wars Podcast, where we just generally break down whatever breaking news came out that week. We do like a little rundown of, hey, what came out this week, comics and books and all that kind of thing. And we usually review whatever came out that week on Disney Plus or eventually, hopefully, in the theaters again. So you can feel free to jump in and listen to us and also interact live, because we do have that chat open on YouTube. So we'd love to see you guys participate in that as well. But once again, thank you so much for having me tonight, Stephen.
Yeah, people can go ahead and check out Starrapter's channel. I'll go ahead and include the links in the show notes like usual. And yeah, the you of that other universe reviewed Eternals because it just came out like recently over there. And it's like, yeah, I think the you and I of that other universe are both like not really feeling that one, which is kind of unfortunate, but it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of valleys and not as many peaks in that movie for me, if I want to put it that way. Disappointed. Still think it's still my least favorite MCU movie. So great. I don't really dislike any MCU movie, but this one I just can't get behind.
Yeah, the me over there says it's his least favorite MCU movie as well. But yeah, like lots of Disney Plus stuff coming. We're actually recording like the day before Disney Plus Day, so it'll be interesting seeing what gets announced here and over there, I guess. But yeah, that's always fun. So thanks again, and people can contact this podcast at delayedreplaypodcast@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts on reading, I don't know, Star Wars, like anything. And we might read your thoughts on the show. You can follow me at Steven Shinder on Instagram and Twitter, Steven Shinder Storytelling on Facebook. You can go to stevenshinder.com, look up info on my novel, Lemons of Mike Rain. It's available on Amazon, and I'm really making progress, making final revisions to the next book. So yeah, that'll be out sometime next year. And I really feel that there's like momentum with it finally, with how I'm using my time recently. Yeah. And yeah, I guess that'll do it. And the next episode of this podcast will be about Star Wars Holiday Special 2, coming to Disney Plus on November 17th in our universe. I guess it's not a thing in that other universe, which is weird. But anyway, without further delay, have a good day.